Hi composition folks, it's Dr. E and I'm here with the instructional video for what will be our group work this semester. We're calling this composition coalitions, and it's a way for us to feel like we're part of a community. It can feel, especially online, that there's a lot of distance between us, and this is a really great way to kind of start to rely on one another, help one another, but also build a community and submit work together. All right, I'm just going to walk through all this information that's posted on D2L. I want to really emphasize the idea that our coalitions are judgment-free zones, right? So we're here to collaborate with one another, kind of make this writing business a bit more approachable. Of course, I want us to feel that way about all of our discussions and all of our work. We're not posting things for other people to judge us. We're posting things for people to offer their input, to help, to suggest changes or revisions, that kind of thing. So no judgment, right? The coalition work will begin after you're placed into small groups, sometimes 4, sometimes 5. It just depends on the count of the class. And there will be 4 to 5 roles, one for each person in that group. This is going to start the second week of the course. And it says here, most weeks you'll have some sort of group work that will function in the discussion board area, right? So this is, your home base to post that information. So for example, if there's a text assigned for that week, sometimes I will say, okay, as a group, I want you to talk about what the main ideas for this reading are, and then you will each eventually post 3 paragraphs going through that information. So you work in your discussion area to kind of talk through those ideas and then post your final thoughts. Okay, sometimes you'll create a mind map, you'll create a plan, a written, it's going to change every so often, just so that we're not doing the same things all the time. And I want you to note that there are 4 roles that exist, but sometimes 5, and these are going to rotate, because the worst thing about group work is when that one person doesn't do what they're supposed to do, right? So if we start to plan out and map out what the responsibilities are, the likelihood of that happening is reduced. Those roles will rotate and change so that any one person is not going to be responsible for the bulk of the work, but grades are given individually. Hold thoughts, okay? So there are the roles and responsibilities. First, there is the architect. So if you are the architect for a particular week, your goal is to begin the conversation. So you're going to log in on D2L on Monday, which I definitely suggest because that's when I post everything. Everything is available. You're going to view the prompt, and then you're going to formulate a way to begin the conversation. And I put here, you are not responsible for creating a post that answers the entirety of the prompt, right? On Monday, when you first see the prompt, you should not feel as though you have to then submit all of that work. No, your role as the architect is to get the ball of conversation rolling, and the way to usually start that is to summarize the assignment in your own words, right? You have all the information that I've given, so in your own words, what are we going to be focused on as a group this week? So sometimes having it put in different kinds of phrasing and different words is really helpful to folks. So that's going to be your job, okay? It does mean that you need to be somewhat familiar with the reading that week or whatever it is that we're going over and discussing, so that you can kind of work to direct and begin the conversation. And so again, summarize the assignment. If other members aren't writing or sharing enough and the conversation begins to stagnate, that's when you are responsible for kind of pushing and prodding the other members by asking questions. But if you have 5 people in your group, you have a questioner. So that's going to be that person's responsibility. And so you may have to then get the questioner involved, although that person should already be taking matters into their own hands. You're also going to need to connect with the scribe. You're going to connect with the scribe to provide feedback, edit, suggestions for that week's discussion breakdown. Every person in the group will have to connect with the scribe to offer the breakdown. I'll get to that. Chill out, it's going to be okay. All right, so for the scribe, your role, if you have that responsibility in the first week that we do this, is to keep track of the conversation and contributions. So you're keeping an eye on everything. You're ultimately going to compile a written breakdown of the conversation and the ideas of the group. So what I put here is you're really in essence summarizing how the discussions developed, who asked the questions, who changed their mind, all of this kind of stuff. And I put here, this can be done in chronological order as members post, so if you have members post on Tuesday, on Wednesday, you can put it in chronological order, like this person shared their ideas on this day. It doesn't have to be specific to the time, but show how the conversation developed and who was contributing, right? So you're summarizing the work of the group. Okay, you can do that chronologically or in any other way or shape that you would like to. Okay, this is a document that you are going to have everybody's input on, so you're keeping track of things. You're essentially keeping a diary of the group's work. You're then going to post that for the whole group to look at. They're looking at it to give you suggestions on revisions and things of that nature. And then you're going to submit the final revised document after you look at everybody's feedback. You're going to submit that work to the participation boss before Sunday at 11:59 p.m. because that's going to be, of course, the due date and time for most of those assignments. Okay. And of course, it needs to follow MLA guidelines. You will have a template. It's okay. Don't worry about that. You'll need to ensure the work is revised and edited. Okay. So we've talked about the architect and the scribe. Let's also consider the participation boss, and I put lucky you. So your role is to collect the self-assessments from all of your group members. So this is a situation where you are given some freedom to grade your own work, your own participation, your own involvement. So there will be a form that the participation boss completes. So all the group members need to submit their own kind of self-assessment to the participation boss before that is due. The participation boss can also put notes to me if they believe that this person has maybe given themselves a grade that's a little bit too low for their efforts, they were being a little bit too critical of their own work, or if somebody gives themselves a grade that is a little bit too high for the contributions they made that week, right? Ultimately, I'm going to go in, I'm going to look at everything and provide a grade, but that feedback, I just think it's really helpful for everyone to reflect on the work that they've done, right? So the participation boss is going to collect that. You'll have the opportunity to address particular grades with me, so you'll need to provide feedback, edit suggestions to the scribe about the week's discussion. Everybody has to do that, help out the scribe after the scribe puts together that summary, and you'll upload an assessment form that will be provided. So once everybody sends you their, this week, I believe I deserved an A because I contributed frequently, I helped in such and such ways. You'll put all that information together into a form that I've created, and you'll submit that to me along with any notes about grades that you want to share. But you're also going to submit the scribe's work so that there's one person from the group who's uploading everything, right? So a lot of responsibilities so far, right? And you'll start to get into a rhythm of this. So if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, it's okay. You're going to get more and more comfortable with this as the semester progresses and as you start to get comfortable with one another. Okay, so finally, in a typical group of 4 is the chief communicator. So this is the chatty person. You get to be the chatty one. So you are making sure that people are engaged. So I put here, you can send email reminders, text messages, or communicate in whatever way to keep the group on track. So this is really unique to what you as a group decide in this upcoming week. Do you want to have the main mode of connecting, aside from in the discussion boards, do you want that to be text messages, a group chat? Do you want to use Discord or Mind or, whatever it is that you want to do, but everybody in the group has to agree upon that. And the chief communicator, like the scribe, needs to keep an eye on things that are going on. Has this person dropped out of the conversation? Has this person not even gotten into the conversation? Has this person offered the scribe feedback on that ultimate summary document, the breakdown of the week? So again, the chief communicator has a good amount of responsibilities. Everybody does. Okay. And then for those of you in groups of 5, there is the questioner, and I put, should you exist, little unicorn. You are going to ensure that everybody's working efficiently and help where needed. So you need to reach out to the architect to ask for their input on what additional assistance is needed. So that's going to be very individual for a particular week. So you may have a mind map that's due, right? And so the communicator is, trying to make sure everybody's involved, but you see one person that's not quite jumping into the conversation enough. Maybe you reach out to that person individually, or maybe you talk with the chief communicator about how to get that person into the conversation. Maybe the architect says, no, this is something that I really need you to focus on this week. So that person is going to have responsibilities, but it's as needed. Right? But ultimately, the questioner is there to question, to get into the discussion if it kind of stalls a little bit, okay? And you push the conversation along, right? You and the architect work together. All right. And of course, you'll need to provide feedback, edit suggestions to the scribe about that week's discussion breakdown. I get it. This is a lot, right? This is a lot of information. And it's just something that's going to become, second nature to you, but it's going to take a little bit, right? So in general, I'm going to ask you in the first week that you're together to kind of make a plan, right? And everybody's group's going to work a little bit differently based on the people that you have there. All right. So some of the things I want you to think about are, what's a timeline for each week? What method of communication, right? So should the chief communicator employ? Should everybody check in on Monday? Maybe only the architect for that week? By when should everyone post their initial response to the prompt? So generally in our syllabus, I have Thursdays as the due date for discussion posts. But sometimes you'll want to work a little bit ahead of that. Maybe you want everybody to have their initial posts done by Wednesday so the scribe can take down all the information, and then you can ask for everyone's input and then post your final kind of conversation, your final discussion on Thursday that's completely revised and edited, that kind of thing. Okay. By when should the participation boss submit the assessment form and revised breakdown? Everything is due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m., but maybe you as a group think, just to make sure everything gets done and not to worry about, maybe we make 7 p.m. on Sunday the due date, or noon, or, whatever works for you. And again, these are things that may change depending on the week, okay? All right. So for the general discussion related to that week's prompt, how often should each person post to contribute equitably, right? We want the responsibility to be equal. Often there will be an assigned number of sentences or paragraphs for the week's post. Those technically have a due date and time of Thursday, but there's some flexibility, right? So the scribe, has to kind of figure out when the breakdown needs to kind of stop, right? When is that document? Do you stop? Do you share it so that it's edited? That kind of thing. What level of participation relates to what grade, right? Oftentimes, an A is showing outstanding effort. This person went above and beyond. Okay, whereas B is just kind of the general. If somebody just does kind of the basics for that week, they get a B, and there's no shame in that game, right? When we get into C, D, F, we really need to consider what the fairness is there, but when we're self-assessing, we have to come back and think about the decisions we made, right? Lastly, please don't waste too much time on this. What's your group's chosen name? And so I put, as the semester progresses, we're going to delve into discussions about food as a class. So consider a food-related name. And I put some suggestions here. They're just suggestions, just thinking about food. So, something to kind of work on and consider. And of course, you can always change that. I did skip this step here. What happens if one group member doesn't participate? Will another coalition member then take on that additional role, or will those responsibilities be divvied up? So if you have somebody who's supposed to be the participation boss that week and they're not checking in at all, who's taking over collecting the self-assessments and submitting the breakdown that the scribe has revised and edited? Okay. Just think about this stuff for a little bit. You'll be asked to kind of think through everything and get something written down for this week's discussion. But if you have any initial questions, you can always reach out to me or post in that Q&A discussion area. All right, good luck this semester.